You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Waystation, your source for Star Wars news and rumors. Today is September 3rd, 2023. And although the writer's strike and the actor strike is continuing, we're still seeing not a whole lot come out, honestly, in regards to news. But there was enough here to kind of cobble together a show. I've got a very special guest with me tonight, and I've got a surprise, an announcement that I've not made to anyone. I think maybe outside of Jonesy and Mom. I think Mom knows as well, but I've not really told anyone about this surprise. So we're going to save that for the very end of this. But I want to welcome Fearless Fred Kennedy to the show. He is he's got a lot of things. You're a comic book writer. You're the creator of MUD79, which we're going to talk about a little bit. I know you've done some DJing. I think you've even done some acting. I did some stalking on you, and I don't know if you want to bring that up, but you've got a well-rounded amount of talents here. But welcome to the show, Fred. Glad that you can make it tonight for the Waystation.
I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad to be here, man. I'm excited. I'm stoked.
Did I get all that right? Is there anything that you want to highlight first?
I've done some acting and some voice acting and stuff. I've done a lot of video game work and like group loops, background video game audio, and then some animation stuff and some commercial acting. I did do one acting gig for like a TV show here in Canada, but I don't think Private Eyes. Great Jason Priestley. Yeah. I was a boxing in-ring announcer. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Fancy. So, but so you and I, so before we get into the news, just quickly kind of get everybody kind of caught up on how you and I connected. So I was looking at it, and we were talking before we came on the air. It was like 3 years ago. Come this November, it'll be 3 years that you reached out, and I don't remember exactly. I reached out to you. You reached out to me. But you've got a project called MUD79, which we're going to talk about again a little bit later, which is kind of I'm going to call it a radio drama. I know you've got, if that's the appropriate term, but you had reached out at the time and we're looking for some help to do some voiceovers. And since then, we've been just kind of exchanging, Twitter messages or X or whatever the hell it's called these days, back and forth. And we finally got something going there on that. But yeah, it's been a while. We've been through COVID together. So we, bonded in some weird way, but yeah.
It was COVID that actually was the reason that project happened, because I had some comics projects that sort of blew up on the launch pad, and anybody that's worked in the comic book industry understands what it's like when you've got a thing, everything's lined up, and then one thing happens, and it's a chain of people working together. And if one thing doesn't work, it all falls apart. And I did the audio drama so that I could sort of be in control of everything. Do you know what I mean? And that was the impetus for me doing that in the first place, was my love of Star Wars, and then being able to do an audio drama where I could voice and sort of produce the lion's share of everything involved.
Yeah. Well, again, we'll get into some of that a little bit later. Before we're going to plug this at the very end too, but just quickly at the top of the show, where can people find you and your work and all that?
At Fearless_Fred. On Twitter and on Instagram. I'm also on Blue Sky and Threads. There's like a million different social channels these days. And on Twitter, exclusively for the Star Wars radio play or audio drama, radio drama, whatever the term is you use, Star Wars MUD79 would be where you can find it.
All right. Sounds good. And Jonesy's with us tonight. He actually chimed in and said, Albert, you're not supposed to admit to the guests that you stalked them first. That is true.
I stalked you. Okay. Everyone needs to know. I stalked Albert first. 100%. That's the way it was. Let's put it all out there. 100%.
How the tables have turned as you twirl your mustache, handlebar mustache. All right. Well, let's talk news. So I want to start with Star Wars eras. Let me pull up. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to pull up the website for this. So this kind of was sprung upon us here just in the last, I don't know, I guess it was about the last week or two at this point. But Star Wars has gone through, and if you go to starwars.com/eras, they now have a webpage where they have pretty much put together all of the symbols that we saw that represent the different eras of Star Wars. But I think more interesting, they've given some of these actual official descriptions. And some of this we already know, and I'm going to skip over the juicy part here, but we've got the Fall of the Jedi in here. They've got the different types of shows, whether it's animated, live action now, associated with where they fall in the era. So So we've got Reign of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, New Republic, Rise of the First Order, and then New Jedi Order, which is blank. So that's, coming based on the announcements that we got just a few months ago with the new movies. But interesting enough, they have now an official description of the Old Republic. So in Legends, and on this show, we've talked a lot about the Old Republic. I'm still an avid player of Star Wars: The Old Republic. In fact, I was on 2 nights ago playing in my guild, still playing that game after like 10 years now.
But here's guild because I'm just soloing.
I need to bring you in. And
I need to get into a guild.
The best thing about this guild is it's called the Elders of the Old Republic, and it's for people that are like 40 and over. So like you're like in, dude. You've already ticked the box. So I'll get you in after the show.
I need to get in there.
But this is so the official, I guess, description says the Republic is founded among the worlds of the galactic core, and the Jedi Order emerges to protect it. A schism within the Jedi leads to the creation of the Sith in this epic era. Now, I think by and large, this pretty much aligns with the Legends kind of, right, depending on where you are. And we're talking about thousands of years that existed in the Old Republic. And so, I mean, it was probably a challenging, daunting task to try to summarize that much time, if that is indeed still true, holds true, right? That breadth of time. But I think for the most part, this is still lines up with what we all have kind of known in Legends. I think my question to you is, number one, do you think this is indicative of a particular era? Are we talking like 500 years, 1,000 years, 25,000 years is the case in Legends?
It's hard to say. Like, it really is hard to say. And I think it comes down to whatever the editors or the people in charge are going to decide. But it's such a vast era. And that's such a non-specific description of what's going on in that era. You could really do anything. And I think that's with intent. And me seeing that, like, I hadn't heard about this until you had mentioned it earlier this week in an email.
Yep.
And looking at it makes me think they've got something planned for that, because that's the only era where there's not a logo. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or a description, because they've got New Jedi Order, and that seems like the low-hanging fruit, right? We've already announced that they were going to bring back Rey Skywalker. She, in some capacity, she was going to reprise. Daisy Ridley would reprise that role. They could have easily slapped something in here. But when I'm with you, like when I see this, and of course this could be the SWOTOR and me talking at this point, but I see this and I think, hey, they're like prepping this, they're priming this for like the next big announcement to be something in this.
Go ahead. I'm fine. Make a big announcement. I'm excited for it. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. I think that, like, as Star Wars fans, we get so worked up with this idea of, will it fit our expectations? And there was a time when I was like that, but now I'm just excited to see more things. I'm excited to see more creators come in with their own takes on things. And I don't think that limits what we can think of as fans. I think it's just cool that we're getting more stuff. I think really we're a little bit spoiled right now. The second we start getting judgmental and huffy puffy about what's being unveiled is the moment we've kind of like lost the plot, Yeah. I think for guys like you and me, I remember in the 90s when there was like fan casts about what is this prequel trilogy to 4, 5, 6 going to be. And I think that, like, for guys like us, I think it's a little bit foolhardy for us to cast any judgment about what could come. I think we should just sit back and be like, let's just wait and see what happens. Like, let's let a new generation put their mark on this saga that we love so much, because it doesn't take away from what it is that we love. It just adds to it. It builds a new audience. Like, my kids love the prequels, and there was loads of guys that are our age that did not love the prequels, but my children absolutely adore them. In fact, I would argue that my oldest son's favorite Star Wars movie is Revenge of the Sith, which I get upset about, but I don't vocalize. I don't ever dump on him for his opinions. I'm like, you love what you love.
Sure.
I love Rogue One and Empire, but you love what you love. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. And I'm with you. Like, before we came on here, we were kind of talking about what we like to refer to as the dark times, right? Where we didn't have any Star Wars from about, 1984 to leading up to 92, 91, before Heir to the Empire came out. There was nothing there. It was just us theorizing about stuff, making crap up on, loose theories of what we had. And so when stuff like this comes out, even though there is a precedence, even though that there are, tons of novels and content that have already been written as part of Legends in this era, I agree. Like, I would love to see a new approach and you take, right? We're going to talk about video games here in just a little bit. You know, there's this KOTOR remake that's been in the works for now, I don't know, 2-3 years. And the idea of it just being kind of a remaster is cool. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it. I'll buy multiple copies of it, right? But the idea that someone's going to come in with a fresh mind, fresh pair of eyes, give it a unique spin on that, like, it's just gravy as far as I'm concerned. I may not like it. It may not resonate with me, but I love the idea. I'm not going to turn away Star Wars.
I'm
It's
going to
like
sit
pizza.
on
It's
my
like
hot
beer.
takes for this because I got some hot takes. I got some hot takes for this one for sure.
All right. Well, the so that one stood out to me, right? The Old Republic. We got nothing for the Dawn of the Jedi again, even though that is, you know, Mangold's potential or future film that he's working on, whatever that's going to look like. But I guess the only other question here is, and this goes back to something I've said on the show here very recently and many times before, in the Old Republic, it's such an expansive amount of time that I wonder if they're going to get a little more surgical in terms of what really is considered the Old Republic. You know, I don't know that we're going to go back 25,000 years. I think there's some challenges, you know, that I've looked at over the years and have found in the way things have evolved or not evolved, right? Over 25,000 years. If you look at the Old Republic stuff or read about it, it's really not that different. Shades are a little bit different. You can see the models, you can see where it progressed, but to think that we've not made any like technological leaps and bounds in 25,000 years in Star Wars, I think that's where they could probably do okay to trim that down a little bit more. How would you feel if they did that and they condensed it to, like, I don't know, a 5,000 year period versus 25,000 years?
So I'm going to lean on some conversations that I've had over the past 20 years since the first time I played Knights of the Old Republic with some of my nerd friends.
Yeah.
We often had this idea that there was like a great contraction of technology and of science and society, and that these planets sort of like became isolated pockets rather than this expansive Old Republic. And that would follow with like the idea, because we always viewed this as like, this is the Roman Empire. And when the Dark Ages occurred, it contracted and became city-states and then slowly expanded again until it hit the Renaissance. So I would like the idea that there is, over this 25,000 years, a great contraction and a regression of society, more so than, you know, taking like surgical things of like, this is exactly how it was. Because I think that one of the frustrating things I always have with Star Wars is that they build these massive societies and these massive like structures of trillions and billions of people, and then they act like everybody within those trillions of billions of people are living the same type of life. But if you look at just Earth, just our Earth, there's 7 billion people on this planet, but not all 7 billion people are living the same life. We're part of the same planet of this epoch, so to speak. But you know, scroll it back a bit, and I think that the pockets that were not as maybe as developed as the core worlds would inevitably regress much greater than the rest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that is what I would like to see them do more with this giant, like enormous stretch of time that they have laid out before them, you know?
Yeah, I think they get themselves in trouble by not doing something similar to what you're talking about and leaning into what we had with Legends. So this is all great. I mean, I think this is useful. It's very, for people that are coming in, and you know, let's not fool around here. I mean, there are people coming into Star Wars fandom literally every day, and so sometimes it becomes overwhelming. It's like when you ask someone asks you like, "Hey, I'm interested in reading the books. Where do I start?" You're like, "Wow."
Well,
sometimes it's like daunting. Like, where the hell do you send them to start with this? But at least this kind of gives them a map of sorts. Right? It gives them a kind of a legend of where, you know, they may look at this and read the description and go, well, that sounds interesting, but not really keen on the, you know, the Empire kind of thing. On that note, as you were looking through all these, and I already know the answer because of MUD79 and Rogue, you've already made a Rogue One reference, but, you know, you may surprise me. If you had to pick one of these eras as your favorite era, the one you find the most intriguing, the one that's got the best, you know, creative stories, and just really, you know, if you had to live in that era, which of these is the one for you, Fred?
I think without a doubt it would be the Imperial era, I guess.
So Reign of the Empire?
Reign of the Empire.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because we talked about this a little bit before we went on. And I feel like the Reign of the Empire and then the Reign of the Republic are sort of two sides of the same coin almost.
Yeah.
And I think that like the thing that's great about the reign of the Empire is the act of rebellion, the act of rebellion, but the rebellion is 100% correct. Like when you watch Andor, you're always rooting for Cassian. You know what I mean? Like you're always rooting for the rebels. And I love that idea of it. But at the same time, when you watch Solo, which is from the same era, you've got to wonder, like, how many of those kids on that planet are just trying to get away from a horrible situation.
Yeah.
Like in Solo, the Empire serves as an escape, and it's sort of downplayed a little bit, but you've got to wonder, like, if you actually follow the subtext of what's being laid out in Solo, I think Solo is, without a doubt, out of all of the movies, the most pro-Empire, not in the sense that it's pro-Empire, but how many kids like Han Solo were trying to get off that planet because it was a garbage place to grow up,
Right.
So I love that idea, and I love that era because it's so accessible to us today, and not just us, but like our parents' generation as well. I think that reign of the Empire and the idea of like really powerful, oppressive authority is something we can all relate to. And I don't think it's our generation or our parents. I think it's all generations, There's always an authority, and there's always an idea of like, let's get away from it. And that idea just paints this incredible like backdrop for story. How do you get away from it? So how can you not love it? I love it.
It goes back. It goes back to everybody loves an underdog story.
Absolutely,
story, right?
That's really what it is.
And you can't be more of an underdog during the reign of the Empire and Palpatine Vader's firm grip there on the galaxy. So I totally get that, and it is arguably the most exciting content. I mean, it's void of a lot of the flashy stuff like lightsabers and the Force, and I think. For me, I definitely agree. I totally get what you're saying. I don't know where I would fall personally. I would say either the High Republic or maybe the Old Republic. Let's just be honest.
Like, are you talking like love as a storyteller, or love would want to live in that era? Because the Old Republic
for me.
Yeah, I'd want to live in the Old Republic. That's where I'd want to live.
Yeah,
because there's like the idea of exploration and discovery. I think that's really cool. I would love that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But exciting storytelling, but lots of tension and sleepless nights. Yeah, that's the reign of the Empire.
The Empire. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. All right. Well, let's move on let's talk about television real quick. So this is kind of a follow-up story. I'm pulling up the website right here. So Disney released this just recently, and they've released the numbers, at least per Disney, of how many people actually watched or downloaded, however they measure that. For Master and Apprentice, which they've netted at 14 million viewers. Now, this kind of flies in the face of some data that came out last week or almost 2 weeks ago now at this point when these first two episodes were released. That data, I'm just giving you let me contextualize this just a little bit. So that data was from Samba, and Samba is data that's captured on smart televisions if somebody opts in, right? So you got to actually actively opt in for that data to be transferred over. And when that initial Samba data came out, a lot was made about how the viewership for Ahsoka failed and paled in comparison to Andor and just about every other series that's out there. So this almost feels like in response to that, because this was Disney. And I think this is a little bit unprecedented. Like, they're actually pulling back the curtain in some ways. Now, we have to trust them because we have no way to verify that this data is correct or accurate. But they're saying 14 million, which makes it, I think, the most successful, if I'm not mistaken here, the most successful launch, at least first episode of a Disney Plus live series. And, oh, by the way, the Asamba data does not account for laptops and mobile devices. So, again, you got a big hole missing there. And sorry, one more thing. In defense of the Samba data, I get what they were trying to say. They were trying to say, look, if we just take and compare the subset of data that we have for the other shows and we compare it to the subset of data that we have for Ahsoka, then everything should be right. And I guess it doesn't scale that way because the numbers that Disney are showing are 14 million, which is a lot. So let me pause there. Do you even care? Like, how much is this on your radar? How much do you care whether a show has downloads, subs. I mean, in the end, it matters, right? Because we don't want these shows to go away. We want them to be successful, so we continue to get good storytelling from Star Wars. But you know, for you as a viewer and as a fan, how much of this do you really pay attention to, and does it impact your viewing?
I don't pay attention to the numbers from a fan perspective. I pay attention to the numbers from a creator perspective, because it's like sales. Like when I get my my like cutoff numbers for my book with Image, I'm very, very much aware of where I am
Sure.
versus
Yeah.
issue to issue to issue to issue. 100%, you have to be. But from a fan, I'm just like, I love the content, I love the show, and I'm rooting for the show to do well. I do wonder if there are some issues with like the strikes and whatnot that are going on in regards to these numbers being released. And I only say that not from the perspective of trying to like draw a line between one thing or another, but just everything feels like a PR war now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like everybody's trying to be like, look what we're doing, look what we're doing, look what we're doing. And it's trying to rise above the extenuating circumstances of things. And I do wonder if like maybe the AI issues in regards to the Nick Fury and Secret Invasion show played a role in people choosing to tune in or tune out or whatnot. And it's frustrating because there's a lot of issues like this that get in the way of really great storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Ahsoka I love the Ahsoka character so much. Yeah. Like, I love Star Wars, but there's always those like high watermark characters that we all love. And Ahsoka, for me and a lot of people, is one of those characters because we've grown up with her, you know? Right, not like you and me, because we're old. Yeah, but like I've watched her grow up as a character, and my kids love Ahsoka Tano so much. And it's like, I want this show to succeed so badly. Like, I loved Andor, and I loved Boba Fett, and I loved Obi-Wan. I love all of it. I'm a Star Wars mark, 100%. But this is a personal show for me. Like, I want this to succeed on not just a fan of Star Wars, but of a fan of the character. Like, it's a personal character. I want to succeed. And if this is what Disney needs to do to be like, guys, this is doing great, to turn those people that are sort of like on the fence of watching, I'm all for it. Like, I really am all for it. Like, I am more invested in Ahsoka Tano as a character in a show than I am even Obi-Wan, which a lot of Star Wars purists will get mad about. But it's like, how often do you get to watch a character grow? Like, Obi-Wan was always Obi-Wan. He was always the master. You know, even when we saw him as Qui-Gon Jinn's apprentice, we knew he was the master. When we saw Ahsoka Tano for the first time, she's like 14 years old. We watched her grow. I want her to succeed more than anyone else, even more than like Anakin or anyone else before, because it's so uncharted. Ahsoka Tano and Ezra are like my characters that I love the most, you know?
Yeah.
I'm preaching here. I'm on the rock right now. I'm preaching. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm glad somebody else is doing it, because usually it's me that gets on these tirades. But no, I like 100% agree with everything you said. Like, I love the fact that we got to see these characters grow, and really, like, it's, if they're trying to, so there's a couple things that we're working against going against the grain here with the release of Ahsoka. We have, of course, the elephant in the room, which is the writer strike and the actor strike. That led to other complications. They couldn't promote this series the way they would. There was no press junket. We didn't have like the behind the scenes stuff. They upped the amount of teasers and the amount of TV spots in lieu of that to try to make up for some of that. You've got things like, we're coming off still COVID. We've got the fatigue of streaming television that was, you know, some of it was probably projected from like the Marvel television series, the Marvel movies. There's like superhero, you know, fatigue that is set in. We had Lucas and Spielberg just recently, as a few months ago, talking about how the movie industry was kind of, you know, not looking so hot because there's a lot of other competition, whether it's video games or streaming television or, you know, whatever, all these other things that are happening with modern day technology. And so you got a lot of things that are working against it. And I think from Disney's perspective, this was probably the right thing to do, right? Finally release the numbers. And I'm going to go to the chat too, because Jonesy just chimed in a while ago and said, it's a curious time to start releasing how many people viewed an episode when that's one of the strike issues. And I agree. Like, I think he's spot on. But if I'm Disney and I'm trying to make up for this and I'm trying to get the word out and get people interested in, let's be honest, in a series that, unless you were a Rebels fan or you just picked up on this Ahsoka character that I saw in season 2 of Mandalorian and like, well, she seems intriguing. There's not a lot of skin in the game for some of these folks, right? I know a lot of people have asked me a lot of questions about who the heck is Ahsoka? Who are these characters? Should I care? Should I watch it? Do I need to go back and watch all the Rebels? Do I need to go back and watch all the Clone Wars?
So you should. Yes, you should.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, if you can, sure.
Yeah.
Sacrifice whatever you need to do. Go do that. But yeah, the point is, there are a lot of things that, we're probably working against this show. And if I'm Disney, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do whatever else I can to kind of make up the gains or the losses that I may have taken, given we're in this kind of weird, unprecedented era of, streaming television or just entertainment in general, I think, at this point.
I agree 100%. And I think the thing that Disney and Star Wars needs to do is just get people in front of the screen to watch it.
Yeah.
And I think the story itself will just sell the product. I think the product sells the product in this case. I think it's really just a case of getting people to actually pay attention and to watch it. I would love to see everybody watch Rebels. We talked before that Rebels, I think, is the best thing Star Wars. It's the purest Star Wars that Star Wars has ever done since the original trilogy. It has something for adults. It has something for children. And I think maybe my love of Ahsoka is sort of inside the wheelhouse, so to speak, because Rebels was the show that made my kids Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
That was the first Star Wars that my kids and I really got into together. I showed them the original trilogy and we watched the movies and they liked them, but they loved Rebels. You know what I mean? Like Rebels was the on-ramp for them. And I that's not to say that I think that Ahsoka could exclude a new fandom. But I think if you have that generation, and there's millions of us that are Star Wars fans, that grew up as Star Wars fans, that had something to bond over our kids with, Ahsoka is going to take that to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing about the nature of streaming content is it's not going to go anywhere. And I think Ahsoka maybe not be the heavyweight knockout punch that people are expecting it, that you and I are expect, because it will be, we'll get knocked out, we'll get up and we'll come back to get knocked out again.
Yes,
but I think that if you watch Rebels today, like let's just say tomorrow you're listening to this right now, and then you go out and you watch Rebels. When you finish Rebels and you watch Ahsoka, it's just going to pound you in the face. And you are going to love it so much more. And I think there's this, I get frustrated with the immediacy of numbers. And people think that a show has to justify its existence within the first month of its existence. And that's cool. And I get, from a sales perspective, it does. But we're not salespeople, we're fans. Yes. And I think that we need to take a step back and think, what are people saying from this a year from now? What are they? Because I didn't watch Rebels season 1 when it came out. We watched Rebels season 1 as season 4 was finishing. And I worry that if I was to judge Rebels by its first season, when the first season came out, I wouldn't have the right perspective on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
And I think that it's rad for us to be in this position to look at Star Wars as what Star Wars is right now. But how old were you? Like, what year were you when you first watched episode 4? Like, what year was it? Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's 70,
like 78. Yeah.
But would you say like that you love it less than someone who watched it 3 years or 4 years before you? No, I think that it's we get too caught up in the immediacy. And I think what will tell whether Ahsoka Tano as a series is a success is how people feel about it 5 years from now. And maybe I have the wrong perspective. You know, I have, but I'm trying consistently to separate myself from the studio perspective. And I love Star Wars, man. I love it. I love it so much. And
well, yeah, you're talking about, so there is a precedent as said here, right? We've talked many times about how after the Clone Wars series was over, going back and watching Attack of the Clones hit so much harder.
Oh
right?
my God. Absolutely.
And we potentially are going to have the same thing here. When we go back, fast forward to 2-3 years from now, and let's just say for the sake of argument, we get some big, movie with Thrawn and it's epic and all kinds of scales get out. It just enhances, like, I think Ahsoka is a series that will benefit from that, right? Rebels is probably going to play into that. It's going to be even more enhanced. And so it just, is it required watching, from a fan perspective? Yes, go watch it. You should watch everything. However, I think those things they certainly are strengthened and they're enhanced, and they enhance the content that comes a little bit later. And all this is because of people like Dave Filoni and people like George Lucas. They want things to matter. They will lay the seeds for things like this that will pay off dividends in the end for that particular series, but then also make these important callbacks and have that connected tissue to stuff that came before it as well. That, again, just enhances your overall kind of enjoyment of Star Wars and your appreciation for the storytelling that is going behind these stories in Star Wars. So I want to go to the chat again here. So Jonesy said, I agree with Fred on Rebels until maybe season 4's weirdness. And he's talked about this on the show many times. He gets he's like Thrawn. He's weirded out by the Jedi devilry that happens in season 4. And Rob's about our age. He says Rebels is amazing, absolutely amazing, even for an old guy like me. 80s kids from the 90s is with us. Hey, buddy, what's going on? Thanks for being here.
It's funny because, like, one of my best friends that I grew up with, that we went to junior high and high school and all that together, he even was like, oh, season 4. I loved Rebels until season 4. And it's like, I get that. But when I watched it with my children, they loved everything.
Yeah.
And when they love it, it makes me love it more,
For sure. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, are there things that if I was writing it, would I change? Maybe. I don't know. But I loved seeing them love Star Wars. And it was a great finale from the sake of watching Kanan find an angle of the Force that we had never seen before. And I would argue that it's very similar to what Luke Skywalker had learned about finding his father, in the sense of finding a way to rise above the situation through the Force. And my screen is not wide enough to show my amazing dramatic flourish with my hands, but he rose above the situation. And I don't want to ruin it, spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but Kanan Jarrus has one of the greatest Force scenes ever.
Yeah,
it's right up there with Luke going, "Father, please." It's just like that, but it's a different way of doing that, and I love it so much. And I think that sometimes we get too caught up in the gravity of our real life scenarios to distance ourselves with this Star Wars of just sometimes being pure and believing can work. And I think that's what I love about Star Wars more than anything else, is that, yes, there's escapism, but I want, like, the classic, like, Fox Mulder poster. I want to believe, and I want to believe that being good can win. Like, that's what I want to believe in at the end of the day, is that being good and just doing what's right for your friends and for your loved ones and for your family can and believing in them can, like, win the day. And I think that's what Kanan, and that's what Luke, and that's what Star Wars at the end of the day really. Look at me, I'm really on a roll here. I'm sorry.
Well, I was chuckling because, not to stereotype, but you're a Canadian who's just brought up X-Files, so I mean you can't stereotype you any more than that.
I love X-Files, man. It's all the same. It's all the same.
Season 4 was the best season, X-Files, just by the way.
There you go.
So, all right, so let's roll on to, I guess, the last thing really, and it's kind of a softball. I mean, there's not a lot here, but this is just recently from IGN. They were talking about how Dark Forces has been announced for a remaster for PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and the Switch. And you can we'll include the links here in the show notes if anybody wants to go and follow it. This was my entry level into Star Wars gaming. Like I remember I went and bought this one, even though X-Wing was already out, I think, and maybe TIE Fighter or TIE Fighter might have been out. I don't know if X-Wing, I forget it. They all kind of came out to me in that same era, but this was my first like PC game where my own money, hard-earned money at my job, went and picked up the game, installed it on my 386 computer, whatever the hell I was running at the time, and played the crap out of this game. And the funny thing is, like, I have vague visions and memories of it, but I don't remember a lot of it, to be honest. And I don't know what I remember about
this game. The thing I remember specifically about Dark Forces was that it was the first like 3D, well, not 3D, it was a shooter game. It was the first shooter game where jumping was a key component in the game.
True, right.
Because there was one specific level you needed to jump over a bridge or something like that. But I loved this game so much. And I mentioned my friend Neil that I'd been friends with since I was in junior high. He had the only computer out of our circle of friends that could run this game. And he had this ergonomic keyboard. And if you remember the layout of the game, the ergonomic keyboard ruined trying to play this game. It was brutally difficult on an ergonomic keyboard. The ones that were like made so that your fingers were all on the opposite sides. Anyone from the 90s remembers the ergonomic keyboard, and they were awful. Yeah. But that keyboard was brutal to play this game on.
Yeah. Well, this is Kyle Katarn. I mean, this is the Kim character that goes on to the Jedi Knight series as well. This was kind of that first entry. And I don't remember ever. There are no force things. You literally run around basically like Doom or whatever else, run around shooting like the crap out of everything.
10 games, thermal detonators, the landmines, all that stuff. It was like classic mid-90s era shooter game stuff.
Yeah, just the Star Wars version of it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look at this. I mean, we had Mon Mothma and, all these other characters that were in here. What was it? General Crix Medine is in there in that shot there. I mean, just the cutaway scenes too. Like, this is stuff that we didn't have. I mean, the only equivalent at the time, right, was probably like Super Star Wars, the Super Nintendo or whatever was on the Genesis at the time. And it wasn't like this. I mean, this was like, holy crap, look at this. I'm like in the game. Like I'm in the movie. Look at that. I mean, you can't, this is, I mean, that's what I was thinking to myself back in, 95, like, it doesn't get any more real than this.
If we hung out in 95, we'd probably have a lot to talk about.
Right. Well, yeah, probably. I was going to start bringing up the Star Wars role-playing game, but Jonesy hates when I do that. So
the original Star Wars role-playing game, the TTRPG, absolutely we can talk about that. Games?
Oh, yeah. I'll show you after the show. I'll give you a camera.
Break out some dice. We'll get going. We'll get a game going.
Let's get some characters going here. But I'm excited, man. Like I love the fact that they're doing I just wonder how many people like want to play this. Like for old fogies like us, it's probably like, oh yeah, we'll get into this.
If they do like a full remaster, re-release, like 3D style, like exactly, Jonesy is right. It is Star Wars Doom. 100% it is. But if they do like an actual remake of the game as opposed to just a paint over, like I was very disappointed with the re-release of GoldenEye. I thought they were going to do an actual remake of the game. They just like re-released it.
Yeah,
if they actually
they did a port basically.
Exactly. If they do an actual remake of the game, I'm there. My kids are there. We're all there. But if it's just a port, I don't know. Like, I don't think the fandom, even the fandom that loved the game, will be too caught up in the bazillions of sci-fi games that are already coming out right now.
Yeah,
but Star Wars video games, like some of the best times I've ever had playing video games were playing like Battlefront 2 with some of my friends when we were like all living in an apartment together and holding those like command posts, all those things. That's great. The Star Wars video games have dramatically improved compared to what people used to say. But if they're just going to port this and re-release it, I think that's a huge waste of a great franchise,
Yeah, I would agree. Like there's there's other ways that you could go about and get this game right now. I mean, I think it's on Steam, right? Just I'd go download it on Steam and play it from there. So I'm with you.
You
I'd
can
like
play
to see
this on your phone right now.
yeah, right. Which is probably about 100 times more powerful than the PC that ran in 1995, of course. But so speaking of that, on the game front, I guess what's the last thing that you played, and is there anything that you're looking forward to? We've talked to you recently about Star Wars Outlaws that got announced here, I think earlier this year.
So stoked about that.
Star Wars Bounty Hunters.
I am glad that it's not out right now, because I'm not allowing myself to play any new games until I'm done the production for MUD79, because I know myself.
Yeah,
if I don't finish that and start playing a new game, I won't finish it. Yeah. So I'm refusing to allow myself any new games.
So this is working.
How amazing they are.
This is working in your favor, but the clock's running out. Like, something's going to get released here pretty soon. So
it's inevitable. There's already all these great games coming out. Do you know how frustrating it is? All my friends are playing Starfield. I'm not touching it. I refuse to touch it because I've got too much production. And the radio play as an entity is very labor intensive. And I'm close to finishing, but I know if I fall off the wagon, it's done. So I have to keep working on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. And there's quite a few of them here. So, I mean, it's, video game news has been kind of pretty light here in the last couple of years. It's exciting anytime we get it. And like you said earlier, I would say, if they're going to do some kind of a remaster, upgrade the graphics in some sort, I'm 100% down. But if it's a straight up port on Dark Forces, I mean, maybe I'll pass.
Dark Forces and Jedi Knight and Jedi Academy. Jedi Academy, I think, would probably be the most amazed I've ever been by a Star Wars game. Yeah, like, especially the level where you're on the swoop bikes and you're able to fly through, and you could create a character that had dark and light powers. I think that was an amazing thing from a Star Wars gaming perspective. Yeah. Like, but to be honest, if you had the double saber and could just do the double saber spin, you could kill anybody. It was one of the most frustrating things about the game. But use the force push to push people off an edge, and then they fall to their deaths. That was one of the most satisfying things ever. Like, I know I'm a terrible person for saying that, but I was always like, ha ha ha, take that.
Well,
Sith acolyte.
It worked for Ezra in season 4, so why not? Let's see. Rob, my Star Wars guys just said Republic Commando. Jonesy says Republic Commando deserves a refresh and a release. That would be pretty sweet if they did.
There's been some like little Easter eggs about Star Wars Republic Commando in the series as well. And I often wonder if there's been some Easter eggs about Republic Commando that we haven't even caught, because I did include some Republic Commando Easter eggs when I did MUD79. 100%.
Did you really?
I love that game so much. loved that game. 100% I did.
We were talking about that before we came on the air, and just like the number of Easter eggs I've caught, and I'm sure there's a billion other ones that I have not caught just yet.
What I've ever noticed about Easter eggs is Easter eggs are always caught by friends that have a circle of friends that talk about things.
Yeah.
Like, so true. There's things that I love about Star Wars that I put in there because my friends and I all used to talk about them when we were growing up.
Right.
So there's
deep cuts that no one else is going to pick up on, but they're there. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I think it's like this tribal nature of Easter eggs is like, there's things that we all love. And then our friends and because we're all like in these little niches of fandom, especially those of us that grew up before the internet. It was like the things that your friends noticed that you'd talk about, you'd watch again on the VHS, and you'd pause and you'd rewind and you'd look again, you pause, watch again, look again. Those are the things that I include when I'm doing the writing for the series, and also for the sound effects of the series specifically. But
let's segue into that in the time that we got left, because I do want to talk about MUD79. So for anybody that isn't aware, this is what we were talking about. So this is, I don't know if it's, again, if the right terminology is radio drama. What would you as a creator call?
I always say radio play, but my producer, who I consistently refer to as the contemptuous harpy, she always says that I need to call it an audio fiction podcast.
Okay.
But I like audio drama, radio play. But it's like a Star Wars fan fiction is really what it is. And I think it's just, I would encourage everyone who is a Star Wars fan to do something akin to this. to tell their own Star Wars story and produce it and do what you want to do with it, because this is just a story that I always wanted to tell about Star Wars, and it's about mud troopers in an Imperial Army platoon that are on this planet that no one's ever heard of, no one's ever going to care about, and it's the idea of the futility of being a soldier in the Imperial Army. Because when you look at the scale of the Galactic Empire, there's millions of planets. And how many of those planets were like, yay, we're Empire, but how many were like, we don't want to be Empire? This is a planet that did not want to be Empire, or at least the people in charge of the planet did not want to be Empire. And it's a very fascinating battle to me, because most of the people on the planet don't care. They don't care if they're Republic. They don't care if they're Imperial. They just want to live their lives. But the people that are in charge, when they were in the Republic, they made a lot of money. But then when the Empire comes in, they're not making much money anymore. And it's this, to me, more than anything else, it's a dichotomy of the rich versus the poor. At the end of the day, MUD79 is rich people versus poor people. That's really what it is at the end of the day.
I like that. I love you do a really good job. So first off, let me just say, as a fan of the radio drama or audio drama or story podcast, I love the writing. Like, you are killing it on the writing. There's moments in here where I'm just like laughing out loud. There's moments in here I'm like, oh, he pulled that from Platoon. Oh, he pulled that from Aliens. Oh, he pulled that from, whatever. I'm picking up on a lot of these references.
Thank you.
But it's but it's really good writing, and you do a great job of, as the primary kind of character narrator. We see it through the perspective of Kwai and what's going on there. And the production value is something too I want to talk about. Like, so maybe before we get into kind of that, maybe how did this even come about? Like, what was it? I mean, and I think we all have had, our own little action hero kind of scenarios growing up, and we've wanted to maybe at some point always live those out in some way, but you've actually done it. So what was the inspiration for it, and specifically why in this particular era?
So I had, at the beginning of 2020, 2020 was supposed to be my year. And I had 3 comic book projects that were greenlit, and I was in the process of negotiating contracts with them. And between the beginning of March and the end of March, they all imploded. And I was so mad. And as a creator, I felt defeated. I felt really upset, and I was angry, and I felt powerless more than anything else. And what's wild is that we had gone to Disney World in February, and I went with a bunch of the friends that I had in high school, and we all brought our kids, and we went to Galaxy's Edge, and we had this amazing time, and we did all these things. And I remember talking about this idea of it. We had this big group conversation about, there had to be a reason, because you've had these. I know you've had these too. We had this. There had to be a reason where people thought the Empire was okay at first. And so we started talking about how probably a lot of people, when the Empire became the Empire, people thought it was just a new flag. And it was the idea that it's not a new thing, it's just a new flag. It's just a new name. And so
it's a rebranding of sorts.
Exactly. It's a rebranding. So I started on the plane ride home from Disney World, I was jotting ideas down on my keyboard, and about how it's this kid whose family fought for the Republic. They were very firm supporters of the Republic during the Clone Wars. And he was just like, he witnessed them, and he was a kid, like 12, 13. He witnessed them fighting for the Republic, but he didn't understand what it meant. And so he got to the point where you have this idea as a teenager of not knowing what you are, not knowing where you're going to go. And he's influenced by these people that fought for the Republic. And they talk about how being in the Republic Army was the greatest thing ever. We fought for the Republic during the Clone Wars. It was so important. It was so great. and he's got this idea in his head that this is what I need to do.
Yeah, I want to be a part of that.
Exactly. I want to be a part of that. And he doesn't want to be a farmer because he's on this agricultural world. And so he just signs up. He joins the Imperial Army because to him, in his perspective of things, this is what I should do.
Yep.
And so it's that idea. And I think that I had watched the Ken Burns Vietnam documentary a few months beforehand, and I found a very common through line of that documentary, and it was very applicable to the Star Wars universe of these kids that grew up in an era of, we fought in the Second World War. It was the best. We fought in Korea. It was the best. This is his time.
Yeah.
This is his war. And so he signs up to get away from the regular world. And the world that he finds himself in is incredibly different than what he had expected it to be. But he's surrounded by dozens of other people that were in the same boat.
Same boat. Yeah.
And that idea of coming together in this situation you weren't expecting to be in, I think is very tenable. Like, I think it's very relatable to all of us, you know? And I think that the song, when I wrote the opening, to me, the opening of the story, the first 3 minutes, I think if you don't get it within the first 3 minutes, I don't think you're going to get it at all.
Yeah.
Because this very opening dialogue, and I realized that I'm writing about a character who's fighting for the Empire, who, as somebody who's grown up loving Star Wars, the Empire is bad. It's always bad.
It's always been the bad guy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you make a listener not think that the character they're listening to is the worst guy ever? Because we watch, it's like every stormtrooper's the worst.
Yeah.
So what we did was we make them hate the stormtroopers. The character hates stormtroopers.
That's my favorite part, by the way. Like in all this, like the fact that the boys in white, as you call them, right?
Yeah,
and
how
they're like the prissy guys, the buckets. Yeah, it's just, I love that aspect of it. And then you've got the mudders, essentially, is what you call them, which are literally the guys in the lower trenches, like one tier below the stormtroopers. They don't get all the new equipment. They're not treated with the world. They're not the face of the Empire, right? As you have as you write for them. But yeah, I love that aspect, and certainly that just the comparison between the two is hilarious every time it comes up in the auto drama.
So there's a great book I read called Blood Red Snow, which is this guy who fought for the German army during the Second World War, and he talks about how the SS were like the worst guys. And so my perspective was, I made the stormtroopers the SS, and I made the regular army guys the mudders, and how much the mudders hate them so much. They just hate them so much because they're just trying to do a job. And there's a great line. There's one of my favorite lines in the whole series is when there's a big event happening in one of the cities on this planet that they're on, and the Empire wants to make a big show that the Empire is there. So they put the stormtroopers up because the stormtroopers are the face of the Empire.
Yeah.
And his line is, he goes, "It's no wonder everybody hates us so much when these guys are walking around just being jerks to everybody all the time."
Right.
And it's like, exactly, that's it.
Yeah.
That's like that's his mentality as a character. And in those first 3 minutes, he explains, like, I fought for the Empire. And if that upsets you, it's probably because you grew up in a time or place where you had different opportunities than I had when I was growing up. And my dream is that I could do a story. I have it all mapped out too. I have a story mapped out about, because this story is written in the New Republic. If you look at the subtext of when he's writing it, it's a memoir, and I wrote it as a war memoir of somebody looking back on years before. And I would love to do the story of his daughter in the New Republic.
Oh, yeah.
That's my dream, because I've got that all mapped out too. Don't worry, it's all there. We can talk after the show.
That's great. That's great. So I guess going back to, I wanted to mention just the production value, and this is no shade on anybody, the content creators. I've watched all kinds of stuff, even back from like when Troopers came out, if you remember that back in the 90s, right?
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
content varies from like the production quality and all. It's all good, right? It's somebody getting to be creative and talking and telling stories about the things that they love. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about this particular series is the fact that the production quality is so high. You do a really good job of getting really good talent. You also do a really good. No, I'm kidding. That's not me. But you do a really good job getting good talent. You
I got this guy
intertwine.
Albert. He's amazing. What do you hear
You
this guy in the second season?
yeah.
Incredible.
Hold on, you're overselling this way too much at this point. But there's, even like the point earlier when you mentioned about the stormtroopers coming in and how they're just a-holes to everybody. When that moment happens, you play a voiceover like from one of the stormtroopers saying something really rude, right? So it's just that it's almost like it is an audio drama, but then it's almost got kind of like a modern feel to it where you're cutting in and out of like things, sound effects and voices and lines and stuff that just really kind of enhance and make you visually see what is being told. I mean, you're doing a great job narratively, right? Telling us what's going on, but just those little enhancements and the clarity and the fidelity of the stuff. How are you doing all this? Is this you alone sitting here clanking away on a keyboard for, hours on end?
Sort of. A lot of it is I have people that I know are big Star Wars fans that would be willing to give me their time because no one's making any money off of this. It's all like
right.
It's very much a fan production. And some of the key characters in there are professional actors that I know from having done voice work or other radio broadcasters and voice actors, etc. Cheyenne Garrick, who does the voice.
She's great.
Oh, she's fantastic. She does Mondi. She does the voice of Corporal Monda High. My friend Carly Myers, who is a radio broadcaster in Vancouver. She's absolutely fantastic as Alcia Staven. And I sort of leaned on people that I knew would do a good. And this is the weird thing is Carly, who does Staven, who is a huge character in the first season. Specifically, she is not a Star Wars fan at all. She's just one of my close
lines, man.
No, she did a great job though.
Yeah.
And her character arc is fantastic. She's great. There's Eltherium, who is, we often talk about the greatest detonator thrower in the platoon, is Jason Lowe, who has done some Star Wars comics for IDW. He also is doing the new Sentry comic for Marvel. Great guy.
Oh yeah.
Great guy.
That's a net job. Sorry.
Tolan is my friend Paul Brown in Edmonton, who is a radio announcer there. And I'm leaning on people that I know will just bring it to the show that are Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
And when I'm writing it and I'm writing the lines, I'm trying to write dialogue where when they have to come in and say things, I'm not going to have to lean on them, but they're going to bring it up a notch. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm trying to bounce back and forth between having someone is really the narration of Quai. He's telling the story as he remembers it being. And the dialogue that is in there is how he's remembering it being said. So it's an interesting way of writing an audio drama. It's similar to like a book on tape, an audio book. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's really at its core is he's telling you and bringing you into his memory. So I'm trying to think about how where my mindset is as I'm writing it. And at first, when I was first writing it, I knew I wanted to have other people to come in, but I wasn't sure about how. And if you listen to the first episode, just the very first line that's not me is Alcia Staven. And it's when she said, he's talking about where she's from, and then she corrects him about because I met this state, her name was Private Staven, she was from blah 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 blah, And then she comes in, she goes, actually, it's this. And when I was writing it, I wasn't sure how I was going to use the dialogue at that point. And it was after that I changed the dialogue to be more present rather than from the past talking to the future, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And the guy,
when you listen to the audio drama, I think you'll pick up on that now. That didn't click until you just said it, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
One of the characters actually is in that band, the Cybertronic Spree. I don't know if they're a band that are all Transformers. Yeah.
I've got a signed album.
I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I will tell you that there's a member of the Cybertronic Spree in the band. And I just thought about that right as I'm saying it, because their first line is actually in the same vein. And I almost gave up on it. And they were very much encouraging me to keep going with it, because they were like, as a Star Wars fan, I'm telling you, you have to keep going with this book. You have to keep going. And I have a 3rd season written. I just need to finish the second pass and then start working on it production wise, because there's a very definite arc of the story if you listen to it. And I think that the second season is incredibly, like, the first season I'm very proud of, but I think the second season is so much stronger from a character development. And if you're a big Star Wars fan, we talked about Easter eggs. You're taking a hot tub bath in Easter eggs in the second season.
Okay. Wow. Oh, yeah. All right. So So just for context, so season 1 is already out. I know you just went through a whole process of remastering that.
Yeah.
One, and
I was never happy with my voice work on the first season. Kate, have you watched Narcos Mexico?
Not. I've seen the pilot, and that was about as far as I got. The
pilot, Kate, when it opens, that's perfect, because the open, when Scoop McNairy does that voiceover, and he's like, "I'm going to tell you a story, and I don't know how it ends."
Oh yeah, okay, I can see the inspiration.
First of all, what an amazing voice! Oh my God, so good. I'd kill for that voice. But the way he does the voiceover, it's so. I'm going to tell you a story, and like when the first version of the first season of MUD, that's how the voice is, not like I'm doing like this, but it's very sad. And I think with the visual component, that sadness just ends up sounding whiny. So I had to revoice the whole first season to make it sound the way I wanted it to sound. And then I redid the sound effects and the music beds and all that stuff, because I learned so much as I went. Because I do radio production for a day job, but I didn't necessarily know how to translate that into a radio play,
or a podcast. Yeah, no, I've heard other people that we've spoken to. It's not the same kind of mediums. There is a little bit of translation that has to go into that, a conversion that has to go into that. So season 1's out. You've got season 2. We're in the midst of season 2, right? I think what is it, 3 episodes have released?
We're on to season 3. Episode 3 is out next Thursday.
We're
at episode 2 right now.
Yep. And so what's the cadence on the release? How many episodes are in season 2? And when can we expect season 3?
Well, season 3 is really dependent on if my wife is accepting of me producing it. But it's mostly written. We're going to do every Thursday, we release a new episode. And we are going to be doing a new episode every Thursday until mid to late January. There's 20 episodes in season 2. And so by the end of season 2, we'll be 32 episodes deep into the series. And I don't think there's anything that's comparable in terms of like a fan production. I really love Troopers, by the way. There's Buckets. There's that one fan series, Buckets. I love that. And I'm not dumping on any other fans. I love fan series because that's a testament to how much people love Star Wars.
Absolutely. Yep.
But I don't think there's anything on the scale of MUD out there. And if somebody tells me there is, please let me know. I would love to know. I would absolutely love to find it.
As a fan, I want to go.
As a fan, and I want to support them because the amount of work that's gone into this and the amount of work that's gone into that is insurmountable. I love people that love something that much, you know?
Right. Yeah.
No one's making any money. Like, we just love it so much. And the third season is mapped out, plotted, absolutely. But I just wait till season 2 is done. Then we'll talk about season 3.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like there's an end to this? Do you have like a kind of a?
I know
where this ends
exactly.
kind of
I
thing?
know the end
Okay.
right now. I can tell you the end right now.
Go ahead and tell us. No, I'm kidding. That's fine. No,
everyone lives happily ever after.
that's a lie. This is Star Wars, sir. That doesn't happen in Star Wars.
We're gonna do like that. What's that, like the Battlestar Galactica ending where they end up at Earth?
Oh yeah.
They're gonna end up on this weird planet. It's called Earth. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. That's the end.
So maybe just kind of like the last questions, I guess. What are some of the challenges that you found in working with the series, and what do you think has gone like really well? Like you thought this was going to be a hurdle, and somehow for whatever reason it turned out to be, something either that you love or has been really successful.
The biggest hurdle is just getting people to listen, because there's a preconceived notion of, oh, it's a fan thing. Well, it can't be very good. But it's there's so many fan projects specifically with Star Wars that are absolutely incredibly well done. And one of the things that has been a huge success was with, because I'm a huge fan of like Troopers, that like weird cops parody.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
That
early
and
2000s.
When I talked to some people from the 501st, and I was like, there's a contingent of the 501st that are MUD troopers.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned that I had a MUD trooper focused radio play, they lost their mind. They thought it was the greatest thing ever. And what was weird is that the dynamic that I have portrayed in the series of MUD troopers feeling like second fiddle to stormtroopers, when I mentioned that aspect of the play to them, they're like, that's exactly the way it is. The stormtroopers dump on us all the time. And I'm like, amazing.
Yes.
Listen to this. You're going to love it. I trust me, you're going to love it. Every single member of the 501st that has listened to this has loved it. And to me, more than anything else, that's the biggest, like, you did a good job. Because I would kill to be a member of the 501st. I just don't have the time or the money right now in my life to join the 501st. But if I could, I'd be a shore trooper or a MUD trooper. 100%. Absolutely. I love the shore troopers. Oh my God. And in season 3, there will be some shore troopers. That's going to happen.
Perfect. That's like my favorite. I moved them over here. I've got a bunch of little shore trooper stuff. Okay, and so I said the news, the thing that I'd kind of teased at the very beginning, I hadn't really mentioned. We're kind of over on time, but I have a small role in this. So the story was, you had reached out like 3 years ago. You had given me this great part, and I was like, holy crap, this is so exciting. There's all these lines, and I get to finally do. I've been wanting to do voiceover and voice
acting. You were an asshole. You were a terrible, terrible character.
Yeah, I know. Which is like, probably not. I hope it's not the same thing. But I got sick. Like I got sick when you needed the lines, and I went through and recorded, and I sounded like I was, either a dying giraffe, a baby giraffe, or a 13-year-old who just started puberty. Right? It was one or the other, some combination thereof. It was cracking, and so I had to let that part go. You gave it to somebody else, and you're like, "Well, here, dude, I'll give you a line." I think you gave me like 4 lines or something. It's not a lot. I forget what it is now,
but you have a way better character this time.
Well, cool. I'm excited. I'm glad to be a part of it. But I think you said I'm in, like, what was it, episode 26 of season 2? So there's a long way before, if anybody wants to hear my shenanigans or my contributions to this, it's going to be a while. But your character
has a good part. Like, you're in the trenches now. You're with us.
I'm with one of the
You're a
mutters.
good guy. You're not, because you were originally,
an a-hole.
You were like a member of, they always call the ISB, because remember in Andor they call them the ISB, right?
Right.
But in MUD they never call them that. They call them the white coats. And they always have this line like, if there's white coats there, it's not a good time.
Yeah.
And I want everyone listening to know that this was 3 years ago. You can back me up. Like, this is 3 years ago. They talk about the white coat. If the white coats are there, it's not a good scene.
Yep.
Because I treated the white coats like the KGB. So the white coats are the KGB. They're bad. If they're there, bad things are going to happen.
Bad stuff is happening. Yeah.
Exactly. So you were initially a KGB guy, but now you're a Mudder. You're one of us.
So
you're one of us. You're a Twi'lek, actually, if you want to know. Your character's
I think
Twi'lek.
You gave me that. You get it. Because I was asking you, do you want me to do the French accent? Which I think
no. That's the thing that I got frustrated with is they have this idea that that every Twi'lek has this French accent. We talked about this on email, actually. I was like, I don't like that at all. I don't like that. because it's like the Twi'lek are supposed to be the second most populous species in the galaxy. So it's like, how can they all have exactly?
I get it.
We're one planet. We have a million different accents and a million different languages. How can that work? It doesn't work.
It doesn't. And Hera doesn't have her accent. I mean, she does when she goes back home, but
her dad has an accent. She doesn't have an accent.
Yeah.
So how can that work? And how can the Twi'lek all be on one side? That's not going to work because the humans are on a bunch of different sides again. So it's like that should be the same way. It should be reflective all over.
Yeah.
You're one of us now.
So thank you. Yeah. Thank you for making me a Mudder.
You're in the trenches with us, Albert.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for not putting me through the ringer on having to do a French accent. I can do one. I just haven't done one in quite some time. I'm glad
you don't have to do a French accent for me, Albert. It's okay. Don't worry.
So yeah, you said Albert. That's what in my French classes. That's what I was called. That and zut à l'heure was the other thing that I always had in the back of my head. So I was trying to work that in.
Sacticolis, mon ami, comment ça
va? Spoken like a true Canadian. All right. Well. Fred, thanks for being on the show. Honestly, good luck on this. We're going to try to promote this as much as I can. I have a self-interest in promoting it selfishly, so I'd like to promote this as much as possible and really get the attention that I think it's well deserving of. I want to be very objective here. Again, the production quality, the voice talent that you got, the time, the effort, and the writing, man. You've done a really, really great job, a very honest job with the writing, and they're characters that you're able to relate to. And I think more than anything, when I think about fan fiction, again, no slight on anything, but character development isn't always kind of like at the top. It's usually about, other things. And you can tell you put a lot into the character development and the arcs. And so it shows.
Thank you.
And I really hope people give it a shot and listen to it, pick up on this series. It's some pretty exciting stuff.
Thank you so much, man. It's been a lot of work, it's been bearing my soul, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, before we get out of here, for anybody listening or watching the stream or the video, where can people find you on social media, and where can they find MUD79 or your comic book work? We didn't even talk about. You got a comic book for them, a little startup company called Image Comics, I think.
Yeah, Image has done a few. They've done a few books.
Maybe
a few. Yeah. I got a book with Image called Dead Romans. We dropped issue 6 like a week ago.
I think it was, the 23rd.
A week and a half ago.
That's it.
I love that you know and I don't. That's amazing. We issue 6 is called Dead Romans. Nick Marenkovich is the artist. Jose Villarrubia did the colors. He was like an iconic legend of comic books. Andrew Thomas did the letters, and I need to give a shout out to our unbelievably talented and amazing editor, Allison O'Toole. If you work in comics and you want a great editor, she is the best. Hands out. Listen, I say that. If she's good enough for Chip Zdarsky, she's good enough for you. And she is the only editor that Chip works with. So there you go.
Wow.
So she's the best. I love her to death. So you can get that. You can go to imagecomics.com. You can find Dead Romans there. You can find me at fearless_Fred on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on Threads, and I'm on Blue Sky again as Fearless Fred. So find me there, and there you go.
Yeah, and check out MUD79 as well.
Yes, that too.
So, yep. All right. Well, we had a lot of folks that joined us tonight, so I want to say quickly thank you to everyone that came out to the live stream. If you guys are interested in listening to the show, catching the live streams, you can head out to cantinacast.com/YouTube. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all the stuff to get us into the algorithm so you guys are, won't be caught unaware when shows go live. I want to say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. If you're interested in Patreon, you can head out to cantinacast.com/Patreon. We've got tiers that start as low as $2, depending on what you're interested in. If you want just the audio, the video, some of the other shenanigans. We've got a Discord server where we have a lot of fun with our Patreons. We've got some exclusives there that are coming up, so look forward to that. And then also for the folks that joined us on the live stream tonight, Music Train, Alexandra, Skyby, Jack, Rob, Jonesy, Kathy, Fighting Arrow, Gary Smith, Toying Around, and you know what? I don't even know if I got everybody else. 80s Kids from the 90s jumped in, as well as Stephanie. I think I got everybody. If I miss you, my apologies. Wasn't intentional. And yeah, so I think we're going to end the show here. We'll be back here in just a couple days, honestly, to actually break down part 4 of the Ahsoka series. It's hard to believe that we were already halfway through this series, and yeah, I don't want it to end, quite honestly. So, Fred, thanks again for being here, man.
Thank you.
All the luck to you, and hopefully we'll get you back on here on the show, so we can talk more MUD79 or talk about West End Games Star Wars role-playing game. Let's just do a whole show on that.
But we should do a live game.
All right.
Let's do that.
Before this gets out of hand and we start losing people, we'll see you guys here in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.